thank you so much for making time for us. Speak to us about why the Babita Deokaran story is so important.
Well, I think primarily it's a story about personal tragedy, someone who died for simply doing her job and for trying to do the right thing, reporting corruption at Tembisa Hospital. But the chilling effect beyond that is near impossible to measure because it has an immense impact on whistleblowers. And any state official or anyone within even a private organization who discovers wrongdoing and then is placed in an immense moral quandary of, do I report this because I know what happens, and I know what happened to Babita Deokaran. She reported her concerns, and within 3 weeks she'd been assassinated. And it's the kind of damage that will be impossible for us to measure, because how do we track how many people didn't come forward? And that's with an overarching understanding of the importance of whistleblowers in the South African context.
Yeah. One of the chilling texts that she sent to the CFO, I want to read it now. Morning, CFO. I'm just worried that the guys in Tembisa are going to realize that we are not releasing their payments and know that we are onto something. Our lives could be in danger.
That was a prescient augur of what was to come. I think that Babita Deokaran had some sort of sense of who she was dealing with. She knew that the action of stopping nearly 100 million rands worth of outgoing payments was going to have cause and effect. And that cause and effect saw her murdered, shot 12 times in her driveway. And now we commemorate the 3rd anniversary of her death. And we need to talk about accountability, and it gives us an opportunity not only to remember her life, but to take stock of what's been done since then and what changes have been made.
And from your investigation, since that SMS or that text was sent, what happened after that?
Well, the response to that text is key. Lerato Maggio, the CFO who's now been suspended, said, "Don't worry, I've reported this matter to the HOD for an urgent investigation. I pray that it starts soon." That was a lie, a bald-faced lie, because she never reported that to the HOD. The first time the HOD heard about that text message was in passing on the day of the murder. And critically, that 100 million rands in payments that she had stopped was released in the following weeks. So the sum total of Babita's report into corruption, calling for an urgent investigation and a stop to payments, died with her.
Does this mean that she was ignored, or there was a deliberate effort to ensure that the information that she had at her disposal is not revealed?
I'm not sure of the correct answer to that question, but the net result is the same. She produced a formal report and said there's 850 million rands worth of suspicious payments coming out of one hospital, Tembisa, and there's 100 million rand that's going to flow out of our accounts in this pay run. Stop the money and urgently investigate those other transactions. That was the central thrust of what she had asked for. None of that happened.
The other point is around the expenditure from Tembisa Hospital, and what you found from your investigation was that it was 4 times in Charlotte Maxeke, more than the Charlotte Maxeke expenditure, and Charlotte Maxeke is 4 times bigger than Tembisa.
That's just one metric. Tembisa was printing money for these tenderpreneurs. They'd blown their goods and services budget in the matter of weeks. They were processing hundreds of millions of rands of payments per month on items that they didn't need, like children's skinny jeans. They paid 10,000 rand for a plastic bucket that you could buy and Pick and Pay for 250 rand. It was wholesale looting going on at Tembisa, and it was done through very deeply entrenched syndicates, which were ordered and which were very practiced at what they were doing. The SIU confirmed our findings, and that's what the SIU has found. Babita had flagged 850 million rands worth of payments that needed investigation. The SIU placed that figure provisionally at 1 billion rand and said in their preliminary report that this is just the tip of the iceberg. We understand that that figure is significantly higher and probably one of the most complex money laundering tender extraction syndicates ever in operation in the country.
The 20 entities which simultaneously build the hospital are controlled by 4 people. Who are they?
So we looked at 217 companies. We identified 4 syndicates that were in operation there. That's individuals with multiple entities under their control. One man, Stefan Govindraju, had 65 companies which were simultaneously billing the hospital. Most of them were controlled by proxies, and as soon as we started exposing them, they changed hands and went back to him. Another key figure is Hangwani Morgan Maumela, who's nephew to President Cyril Ramaphosa from a previous marriage. He controlled, with his cousin, nearly 12 entities. We had another syndicate, the Mazibuko family, a family dynasty operating out of Tembisa Hospital, 4 people, 17 entities that took hundreds of millions of rands collectively.
Who's Silo Sikoko?
Selo Sikoko was then the ANC Treasurer General for the Ekurhuleni region. He had 3 companies simultaneously billing the hospital. Our investigation revealed that he took as much as 15 million rand from Tembisa Hospital. On the high end of his windfall from that facility, we're looking at a figure of nearly 100 million rand.
Then comes the question about accountability, whether from a criminal perspective as well as a disciplinary perspective within the Department of Health. What can you tell us about that?
So from a criminal perspective, the Hawks have failed abjectly in terms of investigating her murder. They were quite content with the 6 triggermen who they arrested in the days after the killing, and when they took a plea and sentencing agreement, the obvious perception that we see from the outside is that they were very happy that their job was done, and there's little to no action in terms of tracing the mastermind who hired them to eliminate Deokaran. The SIU is probably the saving grace of this sorry saga, in that their investigation continues in earnest, and they are tracking thousands of payments and billions of rands worth of expenditure from the hospital. Parallel to that is a Hawks corruption investigation. But that investigation is somewhat hollow, because what we know is that that inquiry that was opened by the Hawks was only opened after media pressure from us. They received parliamentary questions that they needed to answer and went and rushed to open an inquiry. Hopefully, and I say hope with every ounce of sincerity I can muster, is that those investigations are seen through to fruition. But even if they are, we are now 3 years down the road. Evidence can be dispensed with, people's memories fade, and it just appears to me at least that there's a significant loss of impetus in trying to actually push forward real action in this matter.
You mentioned a bit earlier on that you managed to get a hold of some of the emails that were sent, and the police as well had access to Babita's laptop. But why don't we know who the mastermind is?
Well, that is a question for the ether, unfortunately. We know that our entire investigation, everything we found, came from her laptop and from her cell phone. The police seized those devices on the day of her murder, and they sat in a dusty evidence room for 7 months, and they were never even turned on. The investigating officer in this matter ignored crucial evidence and failed. At best, it's a dereliction of duty, and at worst, it's criminal. The Hawks will deny that they ignored this evidence, but we've been able to prove comprehensively, and have published as such, that this evidence was not even examined, not once. They sat on the investigation because they knew they had the 6 triggermen in custody, and they had a circumstantial but winnable case on that matter. The fact remains is that that is not justice. Those 6 men did not hire themselves to do this killing. Someone paid them handsomely to eliminate a whistleblower. And until that person is brought to justice, the family will not rest. And the net effect from that is that it will tell everyone who is interested in eliminating someone, using izinkabi and using paid-for hitmen, can just operate with impunity, because even if the hitmen get arrested, they will keep quiet. And in the case of Babita Deokaran, the person who ordered her death has been walking free for 1,097 days. That's something that no one should be able to abide by.
The story that you're publishing today, what does it reveal?
The story that we will publish this morning reveals the scope of the SIU's investigation, that it's larger than anyone could have ever imagined. The 850 million rand in suspicious payments that Babita first found has been dwarfed by the scale of this extraction syndicate that has taken such deep root at that hospital that it's been operating for as long as 8 years. And she only discovered this in 2021. And this is a single hospital in Gauteng's network. We know from our own investigation that these syndicates were operating at least 5 facilities. So the scale of this is into the billions, and it will increase as the investigations go on.
Later today, you're also meeting with the family, of course, and there's going to be a screening. Tell us more about this screening, and also some of the awards that you received for this work that you've done. Very, very difficult work, I have to say, and also considering your own safety.
So we'll be meeting the family later today for a screening of our documentary. It's a feature-length film that we produced on the basis of our investigation. And, you know, I've over the past couple of years, gotten very close to the family. They are good people who don't deserve this injustice that they've been handed. Never mind that their relative should never have been killed just for doing her job, but they've been failed by the authorities in this matter. Imagine being confronted with the lack of action for years, and every year you need to commemorate the anniversary of this death. You know, we have won awards for our work, but those awards are hollow when you consider that the reason why we get into journalism is to effect real change. Effecting real change would be bringing some semblance of justice to the family. I think that what we did was give them information, but certainly not closure. And then talking about safety, we have always operated under the school of thought that we adopted the same danger that she did. You know, the Gauteng Department of Health worked very hard to cover up her findings, and then we took that and pushed that into the public domain. So we operated under the consideration that we would face the same danger that she did. And we've taken steps to protect ourselves and will continue to do so. But what I do want to make clear is that as our work continues, we won't be cowed. There's no reason for us to stop doing this investigation, and we'll follow this to the fullest extent that we can, because it has such an important effect on whistleblowing and targeted assassinations, which are becoming all too common in our context.
And in conclusion, part of your work is also relying on whistleblowers, the people of integrity, honesty, who want to expose the rot that exists within the spaces that they work in. Our former public protector, Thuli Madonsela, has spoken a lot about this, even during a time as public protector, that we need to protect whistleblowers. What's your take on this? What can be done?
I agree wholeheartedly. I think that there needs to be legislative changes that really underpin how whistleblowers are protected because of the important role that they play. Not only from a journalistic perspective in terms of sharing information with us and helping us advance their cause, but even internally within their own organizations, they need to be protected and not pilloried. And that's the approach that's been taken to whistleblowers in the state capture era and beyond. And you know what this story made abundantly clear for me is that state capture did not end with the Guptas leaving our shores. State capture was here before them, and it continues at every single level. The Tembisa corruption saga shows you that it doesn't need to be capture of grand figures at SOEs at the highest level. It happens at our hospitals, our clinics, our schools, and COVID taught us that. So that continues, and it will continue to happen unless the impunity stops. From an accountability perspective, from police investigating these cases fully, and for people going and starting to wear orange, because without that, the state capture will just continue to run rampant as we've seen it.
Jeff, thank you so much for your time.